Finally, there's former Mayor Michael Nutter, with whom, I should say, we are producing a monthly podcast called How to Really Run a City, with him and former Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed, and it's been fantastic. You learn a lot about solutions. We like to call it the mystery and mastery of urban change making. So check that out wherever you get your podcasts. We should also say, in the interest of transparency, he talked about 2 weeks ago that he had brought Rebecca Reinhardt, one of the other candidates, here to Philadelphia. He hired her. He also, a year and a half ago, gave her money, but has not contributed in this campaign cycle. Just things that we want to trust our audience to know and make their own decisions about what they hear up here tonight. The way this will work is each one of these questioners will get 13 minutes of questioning before we get to your job interview questions. Now let's get this party started with the inimitable Judy von Seldenik.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you for making this possible. I've been hearing about these sessions. I cannot believe how many of you are here, and I think it's awesome here and here. And I want to say one thing about Maria Sanchez, because I love Cherelle Parker as much as anybody in the whole wide world, but when Maria Sanchez first came to Philadelphia, Ed Rendell called me up and said, "You need to support this woman and write a check." I didn't know her, and that was 20 years ago, and I'm loyal, but this is an awesome woman too, so please. And my favorite mayor's here, if he was a woman, he's who I'd really be pushing for. There's many things, but it's not that. So, first of all, I want to thank you for your service in this community, and I really want to thank you as a woman running for mayor and sticking your neck out there, representing so many of us that have long wished that we could have a woman. And I guess my question to you is, having been in public service, your career, you're getting into a situation here where you would be CEO of a very complex organization that's gotten much more complex with everything that's happening in the world today and in our city. And it requires a unique set of skills in terms of leadership. Leadership's the key word, and that's what we really desperately need. And somebody that's going to energize us, motivate us, and bring us together more than anything else. And just love to hear, you describe your style and what kind of a mayor would you be, and how would you get us, back on the trail of success that we've had in the past.
So first, let me just start by saying good evening to each of you, to the citizen, and to the distinguished panel here today. Thank you all so very much for taking the opportunity to be here and to participate in democracy, actually in action. I respect you all a great deal. I am running for mayor of this city for 3 reasons. I think my lived life experience, my professional experience, and actually government and politics, or running government, I don't know. It's the only place in the world where people think that they can do it even if they've never done it before. So some folks think that they don't even have to have an understanding with how to navigate from an intergovernmental perspective. Our American Rescue Plan revenue comes from the federal government to the local level. Some people were just happy for the money. Well, unless you understand what streams come with government money, that's not good if you can't use the revenue to replace revenue that we lost as a result of COVID. You don't know to ask those kind of questions, Judy, unless you have a level of understanding and experience about how government works. So my lived life experience, facing and living, not just because I read a white paper. Listen, data-driven, research-based, the best quantitative analysis, time value of money equations you can get. I want to read it. But guess what? Qualitative analysis is important, but quantitative is as well. It can stop you from engaging in what I call, I know what's best for you's people policy making. It happened when we saw people attempting to put Philadelphia in a box as it related to community policing and criminal justice reform. During a very difficult time during my tenure in council, I heard people shouting a very popular tone at that time, and those voices were so loud, screaming, defund the police. And some people meant, who would explain later, we really didn't mean literally what we said. We meant invest in X, invest in Y, but there was a core constituency that literally meant they wanted to do that. Well, that was different than what Ms. Johnson and Mr. Brown were saying in the neighborhoods. They were saying, where are the officers walking the beat and riding the bike? Proactively in our commercial quarters, at our recreation centers, building trust as guardians, not warriors in our neighborhoods. Judy, leadership is about having the strength and courage to say, now, I listen to the noise, but I listen to the people. And they want a comprehensive plan that includes that proposal to put 300 police officers proactively engaged in community policing in neighborhoods across the city. Better lighting, I mean, quality of life, all of a sudden, it became important for people to talk about, but improving commercial quarters, making neighborhoods greener, rehabbing, existing and abandoned housing stocks. That's something that we've always done. So Cherelle, what's the other leadership quality? I didn't believe this until I talked with someone in the business community, and I just said this to another group. You're going to be shocked and surprised that for the first time in my life, I talked to members of the business community when I said, what's most important to you right now? They said, we have a hope deficit in the city. We need to motivate, inspire, and encourage Philadelphians to have a sense of pride about where we are and make Philadelphia a desirable place that people want to come and do business in. So listen, tax policy was important. Continued reduction of wage, in Birch, streamlining, removing red tape, making it more app-based, web-based, interactive. That was extremely important. But the business community, Judy, they were talking about hope and pride. Believe me, I was shocked. So Judy, my lived experience, one, with poverty, understanding addiction, having grew up in the crack cocaine era with anybody who lived during that era, especially if you were in a black community, Keith, that you knew well. Nobody was talking about a safe crack house in our community back in the 80s and the 90s, which is why I do not support safe injection sites. People in addiction who I've interacted with have said long-term treatment, long-term housing, long-term care. So the answer to the question is my lived life experience, my professional experience, and understanding that it is important to motivate, inspire, and encourage Philadelphians to believe again in government, because I've done work that people can tangibly see, touch, and feel. They're like Baldwin. You all remember the interview. Baldwin says to the reporter who says they care about civil rights, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. We're telling people in Philadelphia that we care about them and believe in them, but we haven't put their tax dollars to work in their communities. We've got to change it. I've had some success, and now, Judy, I want to do it across the city.
Thank you for that. My next question is, in terms of future and dealing with the whole issue of poverty, as we all know, jobs is absolutely key. And bringing jobs here and attracting, other organizations to come relocate here and create jobs. Do you have a plan to do that? And can you talk a little bit about what that would be?
We can't do that if we don't take care of the poor. And the basics are that Philadelphia has to be safer, it has to be cleaner, we want it to be greener, but there has to be economic opportunity for all. If you walk into town now during the week, I know you know that the crowds, minus the pandemic, aren't at the volume that they once were. The energy that we once saw in town, yes, it's beginning to come back because of the outstanding work that Pauline Center City District and so many others have done in that area. But we also want those buildings to be filled with firms who choose Philadelphia, who want to come back because they feel the vibrancy and the growth. And if we don't fix those basics first, we're not going to be able to get much of anything else done. How do you grow the economy? How do you put people on a path to self-sufficiency? You can't do it without two essential things: workforce development and public education. I am a certified secondary English teacher by profession. I've talked to some of my educator friends about this, Judy, and not all of them were happy. When you hear me talk about workforce development in our education system, Philadelphia, we don't live in an agrarian society anymore. Our students aren't going to go work the farms for 2 months, nor are they going to Martha's Vineyard and to Shore, not all of them. So why are we not scheduling school using a year-round schedule? Listen, that doesn't just start at 9 a.m. School should be open at 7:30 in the morning. When I want to drop my son off, I have to explain to him, you have a real working mom. Langston, we can't wait. I need to drop you off because I have a meeting in town, and I can't pick you up at 3:15. So you have to stay, you have to care. What about the parents, Judy, who don't have access to early bird learning and or aftercare? That is economic development. If you want firms to want to move here, not only do you want it safe and clean, but you want to have a friendly environment and one of the best educational systems available for the children of those people who are employed in those firms. In addition to that, out of crisis comes great opportunity. Now here's the optimist in me. Commonwealth Court just ruled. Josh Shapiro, friend of 20 years, is the governor. Joanna McClinton about to make history. Vincent Hughes in the state senate. $11+ billion state surplus. Did you see Philadelphia now? Almost a Mr. Mayor, you'd be super happy about this, $660 million fund balance right now. We are in good shape. Now is the time to, local control means nothing without dollars being driven to it, right? Local control of the school district. We have to be innovative. We have to work in a collaborative manner, and we have to think about doing things that we've never done before. And that's what we will do, Judy, in order to encourage firms to want to be here. Again, the tax base is extremely important. Lowering of wage, lowering of burden, removing red tape to make it, web-based, app-based, easier. Why do I know where Uber is and not the trash truck? Right? Very, very simple questions. We can find a way to do that, but we will encourage firms to want to be here if we are making our city safer and cleaner, and we are investing in our most valuable asset, which is our young people. It's our human infrastructure.
So all of that is so true that you say, but the bottom line is, how do you make it happen? What do you need to do as mayor to make all those wonderful things just come to reality?
In a minute.
Collaboration. Thank you. I'll do that, Larry. Collaboration, Judy. When Cherelle Parker is elected mayor, Judy Von Selden has to answer the phone. Keith Lee Park, Mayor Michael Nutter, they have to answer the phone. You have to form alliances and build coalitions with people you never thought that you would have to work with in order to be successful. I am so happy that during my experience in Harrisburg, because I was forced to work and get things done in an environment that didn't allow me to have a choir behind me advocating for the same thing. So I had to work in a partisan environment with real Republicans, a governor, a House and a Senate, and I had to deliver big for Philadelphia. Public school funding, sales tax increase, a $2.3 billion transportation bill that delivered additional funding to SEPTA so that we didn't have to cut service. All of those things happened, Judy, not because Cherelle Parker was great, but because I was smart enough to pick up the phone and know that I had to get people like William Sasso and David Cohen and Brian Boyer and Sam Stateman, Joe Ashdale and Pat Iden and Gillespie to help me do what I needed to do to get the votes to get it done and to get buy-in from the private sector. Because with all due respect, I don't care if you're the mayor, I don't care if you're the president of the city council. If you're in city council, two numbers matter, 9 and 12. I don't care how good you are, how good your ideas are. If you can't muster up 9 to get what you want to get done, you can't get anything done. And then if the mayor gets cute and you really don't like his idea, you can't just tell him. You got to get 12. 9 and 12. 102 in the House or either 2/3. So those relationships with council members. And how do we know you can really do it, Cherelle? I had to work with a Republican speaker and a Republican leader who I agreed to disagree with 99 point. Ivy Soap is what, 99.9 or 44% pure? 99% of the time, I agreed to disagree with this gentleman. He is now a person I will consider to be a friend because he helped me deliver for Philadelphia and not have to come back to you and say I couldn't deliver because the big bad Republicans were in charge.
There you go, and that was Mike Forsythe, right? Yeah, let's move on.
Thank you for finishing the sentence. I appreciate it.
Let's move on to Keith Parker.
So thank you for having me here tonight. Well, I'm extremely proud of you, having known you pretty much my entire life. To see you on the stage, it's exciting to participate in this panel. But I had to go and think about, Philadelphia as a city is very, very divided. Right? It's divided by neighborhoods, it's divided by wards, divided by divisions, and it's divided in city government. And one of the key things that we need from our mayor, future mayor, or Mel, is someone who can bring everyone together. What can you point to in your career, specifically at the state level, but specifically in city council, where you were able to bring coalitions together? We all know that there is the mighty kind of Northwest neighborhood that would go against the West Philadelphia coalition all the way above. But we need to get beyond that as a city, and let's speak about what you would do to kind of bring the city together.
I love that. So we'll minus Harrisburg and talk about Philadelphia's successes. Keith, if you want to get under my skin, because when we grew up in West Oak Lane, we were still required to sweep the curbs, the sidewalks, and the steps. So if you want to get under my skin, call our city Philadelphia. I got so tired of hearing people say it, but rather than mine be what I see so many people becoming, and that is they are expert articulators of problems, but very short on solutions. They can tell you from A to Z of what the problem is and go backwards and forwards, and you say, okay, well, while you had a seat at the table, what did you do to solve that problem? I want to use safer cleaner. I want to use cleaner. Cherelle, commercial quarters are dirty. I sit in my 5th floor office window looking out the clothespin. I think you all have a section in the paper called Ideas I Was Still. This is what Cherelle stole from Paul Levy in the Center City District. How do we fix it? I look out our window, saw a guy coming across. One guy just came from a cart, dropped the tissue on the ground. Another guy is pulling a trash can. Broom, dustpan, and what do you call it? The picker up in here. Light went off. Center City's not cleaner because no one throws trash here. They're cleaner because it's someone's job to pick up the trash that people throw. How about we do this in neighborhoods? Call Paul Levy up. You'll remember to call Paul. I got it. We need to get it done. How do I do this at 495th Street, Castor Avenue? Very honest, Cherelle. The challenges in neighborhoods, you don't have the individual tax base in those communities in order to do it. Now, you all, for those of you who don't know me, I'm an athlete. I ran track, Judy, I'm a cheerleader. Worst thing in the world you can tell me is what I can accomplish. So I'm immediately in my mind trying to figure out I partner with community development corporations in our neighborhood. I tell the mayor, like I would tell Mayor Nutter, you want my vote for the budget? This is very transparent manner. I need $2 million to get this pilot program up and going. I demonstrated works in my district. I come back to city council, the text messages, the calls with the neon shirts. They say, I'm from the 70s, so it says PHLTCB. What does the TCB mean? Taking care of business. PHL taking care of business. It's across the city now, citywide program. Black, white, community development corporations, churches, no matter the race, socioeconomic status, every section in the neighborhood, if there was a CDC available, they were clamoring to support this program, along with the neighborhood safety and community policing.
Could you point to some direct work with your colleagues? So that sounds like working with some of the CDC. Let's speak about some of the collaborative work you've done with some of your peers.
So many of you will know that we have an affordable housing crisis in the city of Philadelphia. But the most affordable home is the home that you live in, And it would get very frustrating representing a district that is what I would call landlocked. Other areas have lots of industrial space and lots of room to build new. But in areas that are high voting, high civically engaged, high rate of home ownership, like middle neighborhoods, the demand is for preservation of existing. Council President Clark and I got together and we raised the realty transfer tax so that we can generate $100 million to put $60 million into addressing the backlog for something called BSRP. That's our Basic Systems Home Repair Program. Wonderful program, but here's the problem. Income eligibility. I represented the constituency that I almost feel like people have the have-nots versus those who have a little bit. My people aren't rich, but they usually made a nickel over the income eligibility guidelines, consistent payers to the tax base, but never eligible for any programs that the city offer. So I said, Council President Clark, I can't support raising this tax without having something tangible to give to that constituency. So we started Restore, Repair, Renew. It's a program. You can have a credit score as low as 580, 10 years to pay it back, 3% fixed interest rate, borrow up to $50,000, and you can fix anything you want in your house, and you can earn up to 120% of the area median income. So those consistent payers of the tax base, they would not be included. How did I work with my colleagues? There were some who thought that 100% of that revenue should only be driven to areas that were significantly low income. And that's when I had to talk with individual colleagues who were similarly situated. I can remember Councilmember Heenan, he represented the Tacony, Mayfair area. Councilwoman Bass, right next door, Stanton, Brian O'Neill. You had formed alliances with people based on issues, because every time you need to put together 9 or 12, it's not always the same 9. So the formula that I use is the alliance and the coalition is based on what the issue is. And so that is an excellent example for neighborhood preservation initiative and commercial quarter funding. You have to get allies to support the ask in the budget. If the president gets one list, it just gets one sheet, 17 members, and only one person has, middle neighborhoods or another issue on, that's just one issue. So you get as many of your colleagues as you possibly can to support the issue. So now there's great demand, and it ends up in the budget.
Appreciate that answer. So I'll go in a slightly different direction. So, I always say Philadelphia is the original startup city, right? And as the chief executive officer of the city, you are essentially going to be responsible for selling the city to multiple constituencies, to the people in the neighborhoods, to the business community, to people we want to invest and come into the city. Give us your best sales pitch of why people would want to bring businesses to Philadelphia, why people should stay in Philadelphia considering what's happening around crime and things like that. Why should people stay in Philadelphia and why should businesses come to Philadelphia?
Talking about after Parker administration has had a chance just to do get some stuff done, right?
Yes.
Because Philadelphia is not only the birthplace of democracy, it is no longer a pass-through between Washington, D.C. and New York. It is affordable. It's a 21st century, first-class, globally connected city, offering the best education, public education that can be offered in a city. In addition, we're safer, we're cleaner, and we provide access to economic opportunity for all. Jane Golding, arts and culture is jumping. Everybody wants to be here, and we've got a deputy who it's their responsibility to deal with arts and culture, and there's room in Philadelphia. It's not so big that you don't feel like you're in the neighborhood, but I don't want to go get the neighborhood or understand or meet anybody in the neighborhood if I don't feel good walking to the store. So you should invest in us because we have some of the best and brightest startups. We also have access to capital, right? And we have to be innovative in our thinking about how we use some of the leverage that the city has. And I want you to think about some funds that we control as it relates to supporting small businesses, particularly people who scream they want to support small businesses and the only thing they talk about is access to debt capital. They never talk about private equity, patient capital, or venture capital. Well, who's Shark Tanking for black and brown people in the city of Philadelphia, minus technology and training assistance. And so those are all of the reasons why. And it won't just be because the mayor said it. How about if you can look at our population and no longer are they calling us six? We're back. Let's get out of here. We're back to our fifth spot. And we're growing. We're growing. We're getting back to where we belong because people are choosing to listen. We're being forward thinking with proposed development and growth in the city. People are engaged in their communities and people want to choose Philadelphia because they see what's happening.
So I think one of the reasons why people don't choose Philadelphia or choose to leave is because of the education system, right? So I'd like for you to speak on what we can do to address that immediately within the first 4 years of any mayor's term.
In two minutes.
Quickly, and we're going to try to be as short as we possibly can, but Larry, you have to understand this. I have a breadth and depth of intergovernmental experience that no one else brings to this race. And I've got to take my time and explain this. Thank you so much for your patience. Let me just say this, Keith, workforce development. Everybody's not going to college. The Apple technician at the Genius Bar who went to college and dropped out because I'm an English teacher. I think it's blasphemy. How could he not like literature and reading and writing papers? But he did say what he liked to do was to take things apart and put them back together. How does he end up being an Apple technician, taking things apart and putting things together? Guess what Apple did? They sent him to Apple school. Then that person's an Apple technician. Why are we not training for every industry that's growing in the city of Philadelphia within our schools? Also, employment opportunities here in the city of Philadelphia. We should be training our young, I don't care if it's police, I don't care if it's fire, I don't care if it's building engineers or inspectors at L&I. Why are we not training our folks? And listen, Keith, I'm not just, because it's so frustrating hearing people talk about sending someone to a training school and you have a family to take care of a mortgage to pay and they want you to go to school and just train. And you say, well, how am I going to pay my bills? Making sure people are earning while they're learning. And we can do that immediately through partnership, the year-round school proposal. I can't unveil right now how we're talking about paying for that. You'll see that in more detail on my website, and we'll announce that soon. But we also have to remember this, and I'm unapologetic about this. Traditional teachers will not be the only instructors in public education. We must have the private sector engaged in training and teaching our young people. There's no way we can compete in the 21st century global economy, in the industries that are thriving in our city. We don't have actively engaged in our educational system. And I don't care if we're talking about traditional publics and or charters. I support quality seats. Okay, no charters at the expense of traditional publics, which is why I want that charter school reimbursement line item restored that we lost under the Corbett administration. But we need quality seats keep, and we can do that immediately with the year-long school. You know, I'm always very frustrated about people looking at folks living in poverty and almost basically deciding what's best for them. You're not talking to them about what it is that they are interested in doing. And if you talk to people who live in neighborhoods who are living in poverty across the city, they want access to opportunity. They don't want to have to go get surplus food, similar to what I did when I had to do when I grew up. They don't want to have to do that. We need to use government as a tool to put people on the path to self-sufficiency so that they can take care of themselves. If you do it, you will be surprised at the significant reduction in violent crime and violence that you'll see in the city of Philadelphia if we do it right.
All right, let's great questions, Keith. Let's move on to former Mayor Michael Leonard with some of the greatest socks I've ever seen.
Awesome.
Generally not known to be a fancy person, but I figured I'd at least get some nice socks. Good evening. But before I ask a question, given what I used to do for a living, I just want to ask folks to take a moment. Think about Temple University police officer Christopher Fitzgerald. Incidents in our city touch all of us in very different ways. Dealt with a lot of these issues during my time. I'm going to try to do a little bit of lightning round with you. We have a little clock over there. I'd like to get
He's laying it down.
I'd like to get most of my questions. You were asked earlier about why you wanted the position. I'm going to come at that from a different perspective. Was there a moment, an incident, a circumstance that compelled you to run for mayor? 30 seconds.
You didn't answer questions like this in 30 seconds. Mr. Mayor, was member of City Council watching a difference in style and how the city of Philadelphia was responding to neighborhood preservation, stabilization across the city as it related not just to equity and growth. I'm talking about when they were building new, but I watched neighborhoods that were once thriving communities begin to decline. And I sort of, went on and was intentional about raising the red flags about middle neighborhoods and their decline in the city of Philadelphia. And that's when I knew there was a way that we can do both.
Thanks. I think the rest of my questions fall in a category of judgment, mindset, and decision-making. This is a position that requires a significant amount of personal judgment. You may not have all the information you need. And when I hire people, I always wanted to know their thought process, how they dealt with information. In the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd 3 years ago, you introduced Bill 200363 that reimposed the one-year residency requirement that people had to live in the city for a year before they could have even applied for a job, and it also applied to police officers. Was that a knee-jerk reaction to the murder of George Floyd?
One, absolutely not, but let's just get this clear on the record. I was the majority leader of the City Council of Philadelphia, and you know the role of the majority leaders to introduce legislation on behalf of the president.
I fully understand.
And
You also
just,
co-sponsored it.
but just for the record, I just want the record to be clear.
I understand.
Not only was I co-sponsor of the bill, but I was the lead advocate for the bill publicly because I wholeheartedly. And part of the reason why is because I don't retract my support on residency. I want us to create as many jobs as possible that give Philadelphia residents the ability, Mr. Mayor, to have those jobs. But you know, and I want the
There's
viewing
nothing to
audience.
prevent Philadelphians from getting those.
No, but I want to be real
It's
clear
our
about
ability
this.
to hire people.
No, I want to be real clear about this, Mr. Mayor. Residency and that legislation have been the law of the land for years. That legislation was changed by current Mayor Jim Kenney. That was his legislation when he was a member of the City Council of Philadelphia.
No, actually, I changed it.
Well,
We changed it when I came in.
with all due respect, Mayor Jim Kenney, I'm talking about not giving through negotiating, giving Philadelphia police officers and firefighters the ability to live outside the city. That is something separate, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely.
You gave Philadelphia firefighters and police officers the ability to live outside the city.
No, actually, an arbitrator did that.
But it was during your 10 years, Mayor. So when they were homeowners here, they were outside. My point is that Mayor Jim Kenney, who was very much a strong advocate for not having the residency requirement, who served with you in the City Council of Philadelphia. Like I was the lead advocate for the residency bill, although it wasn't mine. Jim Kenney was the lead advocate for that issue.
I just want to make sure we're not mixing items here. This is about establishing residency before you can ever take a civil service test. In an environment where we were already struggling to hire police officers in the first place. So I don't think it's about Philadelphians getting jobs or not getting jobs. We need more officers. My only question is, why was the bill introduced that reversed the previous policy when we don't have enough officers in the first place? Why would we make it more difficult to hire people? Regardless of where they came from.
I reject the narrative, and I know, and I know you know this, Mr. Mayor, so when you hear me give this clarity, this is not for you because you already know this, but for the benefit of the viewing public. There's a residency requirement in the city of Philadelphia for municipal employees. Whenever there is a position that we cannot find a Philadelphian to occupy, the mayor has the ability to ask for something called a waiver. And the mayor asks for this waiver, which is very much an administrative, bureaucratic process that you ask for when you communicate with HR, along with our Civil Service Commission that is appointed by the mayor. So when I would get in debates on television about it, and people would use it, as an excuse, I talked to reporters, I would say, listen, it's a red herring. The mayor has the ability to ask for a waiver to fill any job in the city of Philadelphia, with or without, with a residency requirement. And so to me, it was red herring. I need more police. I advertise it. It's a tool. The mayor just didn't use it. And I said it publicly long before this interview.
So a year ago, after all that, you proposed, and you talked about here tonight, hiring 300 more police officers. We have 21 police districts, and that would result in 5 officers per shift in all of those districts. We also lose nearly 300 police officers a year to retirements and the drop program. And so that's a net wash. You'd have to hire hundreds and hundreds of more officers to actually put more officers on the street, because the 300 that you're talking about get erased by the 300 that we lose annually. So how did you come up with the 300 number?
For the benefit of the audience, I want you to remember what I said earlier. expert articulators of problems versus those who pose solutions. When I introduced that plan, Mr. Mayor, and I called for those 300 officers proactively engaged in community policing, I also offered a solution. Now, Mr. Mayor, some people could differ with me, or say they agree to disagree with the solution I proposed, but at that time I said we should rehire retirees without stopping their pension benefits, have them on desk duty or inside the office doing administrative work, and get able-bodied men and women, back on the street. Now, Mr. Mayor, I introduced the legislation, and you know what happened? But you know what happened?
220-487.
We introduced the legislation in the law department, and you know that department as well. They said to us on the public record, and district council person in particular doesn't like this, Cherelle, you can continue to move forward with this legislative process, but the mayor has the ability to do it right now as temporary workers. The mayor can bring them back. They cannot stay on for more than 3 years, or else the pension and health care requirement would have to kick in. But the mayor can do it right now. I remember Governor Rendell, former Mayor Rendell, calling me once he read that I had, introduced this legislation. He said, wow, first you had the heart to introduce the plan. Now you have the heart to figure out how we can, fill that void because of this nationwide shortage immediately. So that's how I propose to address it, Mr.
No, I understand. On that legislation, though, there was significant opposition by at least some of the city unions. Secondly, to be blunt, some of the folks might not actually want them back.
Well, the first thing we had to make sure of, Mr. Mayor, and this is the difference, is when you heard me say I introduced the plan, it's like me standing up and saying that I support Terry stops. I support zero tolerance for any misuse and or abuse of authority by law enforcement, and will do exactly in the police commissioner functioning under Parker administration would do what Commissioner Ramsey did when there was some who engaged in the misuse and abuse of authority. He fired them immediately. Some people got their jobs back through arbitration, but under another administration and the Ramsey Police Department, zero tolerance, they were gone, sue me later, we'll talk soon. That was the case with the Parker plan that I introduced. So some people could say, well, who would want them back? Well, now you're saying that I wouldn't have a human resources department within the police department that would be vetting the officers who would be even eligible to come back. Obviously, we wouldn't allow anyone with a checkered past, but that's an administrative function, that oversight and leadership of the department. They would have boxes to check to ensure that anyone coming back, they would have to have a clean jacket in order to do so. And when you hire the kind of leadership of the police department and for HR that I plan on bringing on during the Parker administration, you get the best and the brightest, and people will do their job, Mr. Mayor. So I agree with you. Some people didn't like it, but that was my solution. When other people were screaming about it being a challenge, Mr. Mayor, recruiting the challenge, using the residency requirement, although we had a waiver, to me it was a red herring, I proposed a solution.
Right. Toughest decision in public service. It's a question. Toughest decision in public service. It's a question. I'm sorry.
Staffing. Having the best and the brightest to serve.
No, I'm sorry. Maybe the toughest decision that you've had to make in public service.
This goes back to my tenure in Harrisburg, when we had two competing issues that needed to be addressed at the same time. The one was funding for the school district of Philadelphia, when Dr. Height informed us that unless the city got enabling authority to have new additional recurring revenue, schools would not open. But at the same time, we were dealing with a transportation crisis, roads, bridges, and highways crumbling, set the $5 billion capital backlog, trains about to be canceled, cars weren't getting fixed, and you have to put together the coalitions necessary, as you heard me state. You got to get to 102 to get bills through the chamber. And transportation moved before the funding for public education.
Believe me, I remember.
Oh, yeah, so
Worst
that
decision.
was tough. That's extremely
Worst
tough.
decision you've made in public service.
Worst decision. Worst decision was during the mandatory reporting of lost and stolen guns. First time we ever got a vote on the record in the General Assembly, NRA, most powerful lobby in the Commonwealth. My legislation, but you'll remember Dave Ladansky from Western Pennsylvania, he was a hunter. We said, wow, he's not afraid. This is common sense legislation. Joe Grace is with C5. We put together the coalition. I did not invest enough time, Holly Kinzer, in talking with Republican hunters and Democratic hunters from rural Pennsylvania. Instead of my simply saying, we don't agree on this issue, I should have sat down and talked with them a little bit more instead of just not counting them. So we sent out the co-sponsorship memo, we sent the team of people to visit you, we called you and asked you would you support, and you said no. And we have our yes, no, maybe, groups, columns, and I let them stay in the no, because they gave me an easy no. And, my grandmother would say, instead of taking a fast no, you could wait for a slow yes. I didn't work hard enough for the slow yes. And if I had it to do all over again, I would have worked more to GTY to get to yes.
Let's move on to, thank you for those questions and answers. Let's move on to audience questions, and my man Charles Ellison here from Word. We're running a little bit behind, so we'll probably only do a few of these, but go at it, Charles.
Councilwoman, how are you doing? Good evening. Congratulations, you've made it to the next round. All right. Okay, these are audiences from the questions from the audience. Here's the first one. What 3 outcomes do you use to measure the performance of city government?
Tangible results first, that people can see, touch, and feel. Qualitative analysis and then quantitative analysis. I have to see it and touch it. It can't just be on paper. In order to get people to believe that it works, they need to see it as well. But I also want to measure it. And so as we think about systems for determining how you will measure success or failure, I just literally decided on one in a prior meeting. You heard me mention earlier, Judy. It was that one of the things I want to be measured on, because a lot of people have had a whole lot of big poverty plans, but how about measuring me on the number of Philadelphians who were receiving cash assistance or TANF food stamps and or a blue medical card? That means their support, like I had to get public assistance and my grandmother got cash welfare and food stamps to take care of me. How about you measure my impact on reducing poverty during my first 4 years by seeing how many people do we get off those rolls and into employment opportunities and careers where they are earning a living wage, health care, and have access to retirement security. I know it's not sexy, but I want to be measured that kind of way. It's pretty intense, but that's how I determine whether or not I'm being effective.
All right. The next question. Black women represent 73% of pregnancy-related deaths in the city of Philadelphia. What is your Black maternal mortality plan?
One, we got to make sure that Black women are heard by their physicians. I'm a part of the OAM club. I can't say on air what that means. The only thing I'll tell you is that I was 39, my first and only child. He's 10 years old. You know what OAM means? We have to make sure women are getting connected to service, and your zip code shouldn't determine whether or not you get access to quality health care. Why does this issue become a passion for me? Charles, my mother was a single teenage mom who got pregnant with me when she was 15 years old. So you know that means she didn't go to work. She didn't earn the right to have her own health care to take care of her pregnant self. I was taken care of by my grandparents who, because I lost my mother earlier, depended on government because she was a domestic worker and she had no retirement security. So making sure that regardless of someone's race, class, socioeconomic status, but Black women in particular, making sure that physicians are listening to them, they're connected to health, educational opportunities, like this inequality care. Ayla Stanford said we need more. Think about how many OBGYN units we closed in hospitals in our region, and that was occurring when I was in Harrisburg, so we have to do a better job.
All right, thank you. Next question. What quality of life improvements can disabled Philadelphians expect to see during your administration? And this person in the audience adds that over 15% of Philadelphia residents are disabled.
Listen, fortunately, and I know this was as a result of, not in essence of the city's choice, but as a result of case law in the court's ruling, but I want you to imagine a pedestrian-friendly Philadelphia. A pedestrian-friendly Philadelphia, right? One where you can walk and you can ride your bike, and it is safer and it is cleaner and it's greener, so it's aesthetically appealing. But there is an opportunity for you to experience the vibrancy of your city, no matter your mode of transportation. That's how they know. And listen, from an economic development perspective, there is no one who's been a member of the City Council of Philadelphia who's done more work with neighborhood-based economic development than Cherelle Parker has. That's been my baby.
What would you do with the hundreds of millions, it's close to billions, of dollars still unspent from the federal government's COVID emergency allocation to Philadelphia? I'll probably add there's also unspent monies out there from bipartisan infrastructure law and some other spots too, but go ahead and answer.
So let's make that the last one for the audience questions, because we're running a little bit behind. Go ahead.
Sorry.
We're going to make this the last one from the audience.
That's one.
Okay, just as an FYI, Charles, leverage it. Long before rebuild, and listen, I thank God for my constituents because they are the ones who push me so extremely hard. But long before there was a rebuild, Charles, people who lived in the 9th district or the 200 legislative district, you will notice that they have quality amenities as it relates to their parks, rec centers, and even their libraries, because we've always used an intergovernmental approach. What do I mean? The state senator, the council person, the state rep, everybody leverages their vote to put a nickel in the pot. When you get the quarter, you rehab the center, Finley, Dorothy Emanuel, Pleasant Playground. And so we will be able to make sure that we are leveraging these dollars. One, we have to have a capital budget for the rebuilding of Philadelphia schools. The Fund Our Schools Coalition, they did an outstanding job. You can advocate all you want. If it's not a line item, it's some coordinated activity to rebuild Philadelphia schools, demolish them and rebuild them, it won't happen. Next, to address the affordable housing crisis, remember, building of new, preservation of existing. We have to make sure that we continue to incentivize that as much as we can. And I have to mention this only because I see some people who are here today and I see the Renner shirt. And Philadelphia, no matter how long people have referred to us, so we've been the poorest big city in the nation, we've always had a high rate of home ownership, especially amongst Black people. But guess what? And brown folks. Now, we're almost basically 50-50. The only people I want renting in Philadelphia are the people like my girlfriend who's here. I saw her, little shorty, when I was coming in. She says, I'm not shoveling snow or picking up leaves ever again. So don't try to sell me on home ownership, Cherelle, I don't want to do it. But she's the only person. Her people situated like her, not because that dream is out of reach and building a generational wealth is not something that's available to you. I want you to have that opportunity.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Parker. I have one final question for you that I've asked all the candidates, that if you're elected mayor, would you agree now to come back as mayor and do a session like this as an annual performance review?
All of the time, and don't you all tell, but this is probably one of the best parts of the trail, because this is when we really get an opportunity to interact with you, and you get an opportunity to hear us unfiltered. Like, with all due respect, Larry, you're a journalist. There are a lot of journalists who are here today. I have some press people who are here today. But what I like about this is you get a chance to experience me, see me, feel me, and you don't use Larry as a filter. You can decide for yourself.
We're gonna stay here and bring out Helen again because we're running a little bit behind. So we're gonna take a quick photo up here and then just go straight to our next candidate.